Perhaps, out of all the 7 kingdoms, the North contains some of the most varied and unique culture within its borders. One of the most prominent cultures are the clans of the Northern Mountains, who are especially famed for their adherence to lords of hospitality and their petty lords who rule these clans, vying with each other to be the most open-handed of hosts. Some have put forward the similarities between the clansmen of the North and those of the Vale, and the peoples beyond the wall. However, I think these similarities are minimal. The clans are located mostly in the mountainous regions beyond the Wolfswood, in the high valleys and meadows, and along the Bay of Ice and certain rivers of the north. They owe their allegiance to House Stark of Winterfell, but their disputes have often created difficulties for the lords of Winterfell and the kings of Winter before them, forcing them to send men into the mountains to quell the bloodshed, or to summon the chiefs to Winterfell to argue their cases. In a way, the clans fight over their own small petty kingdoms, and gives us a glimpse of the instability of early Westeros, when itself was formed of thousands of petty kingdoms. The mightiest of the northern clans are the Wolves, the fisherfolk who dwell along the shores of the Bay of Ice. Their hatred of the wildlings north of the wall is matched only by their hatred of the men of the Iron Islands, who have often raided along the shores of the Bay of Ice, burning their halls, carrying off their crops, and taking their wives and daughters as thralls and salt wives. Large tracts of the Stony Shore, Bear Island, Sea Dragon Point, and Cape Kraken have all been held by Ironmen at times over the centuries. Cape Kraken, closest to the Iron Islands, has changed hands so many times that many maesters have come to believe its populace to be closer in blood to the Ironmen than the Northmen. The histories and legends of the North state that Roderick Stark won Bear Island back from the Ironborn in a wrestling match. Unlike many legends, perhaps there is some truth to this tale, as the king of the Iron Islands were often moved to prove their prowess and their right to wear the driftwood crown with feats of strength and in single combat. More skeptical scholars call this into question, suggesting that this wrestling was in fact a war of words, and it's much more likely a diplomatic solution was found. Despite centuries of feuds, the mountain clans have traditionally remained loyal to the Starks through war and peace, due to their closer proximity to Winterfell itself and closer ties to traditional northern culture. The same cannot be said of the savage mountain people of Skagos, the mountainous island east of the Bay of Seals. The Skagosi who reside there are little regarded by other Northmen, who consider them no better than wildlings and name them Skags. The Skagosi call themselves the Stoneborn, referring to the fact that Skagos means stone in the old tongue. A huge, hairy, foul-smelling folk. Some maesters believe the Skagosi to have a strong mix with Ebony's blood. Others suggest that they may be descendants from giants. Clad in skin and fur and untanned hides, they are said to ride on unicorns. The Skagosi are the subject of many dark rumour. It is claimed they still offer human sacrifices to their weirwood trees, luring passing ships to destruction with false lights, as well as feeding upon the flesh of men during the cold, harsh winters. It is most likely that the Skagosi surely did at one point practice cannibalism, though whether this custom still happens today is a matter of much dispute. The Edge of the World, a collection of tales and legends compiled by Maester Balder, who served the Night's Watch at Eastwatch by the Sea, is the chief source of much of what is known to the citadel of the Skagosi, including the Feast of Skane, wherein a Skagosi war fleet descended upon a small nearby isle of Skane, raping and carrying off the Skanish women while slaying the Skanish men, consuming their flesh in a feast that lasted a fortnight. Whether this is true or not, Skane remains uninhabited to this day, though tumbled stones and overgrown foundations testify that men did once dwell amongst its windswept hills and stony shores. The unicorns of Skagos were once scoffed at by the maesters at the citadel in Old Town. The occasional unicorn horn offered by sketchy merchants often turns out to be the horn of a kind of whale hunted by the whalers of Ip. However, horns of a quite different kind, reputed to be from Skagos, have been seen by the maesters at Eastwatch upon occasion. It is also said that those seafarers brave enough to trade on Skagos have glimpsed the stone-born lords riding great shaggy horned beasts. Monstrous mounts, so sure-footed they have been known to climb the side of mountains. A living example of such a creature, or even a skeleton, has long been sought for study, but none has ever been brought to Old Town, to the maesters of the Citadel to verify the creature's existence. Though rarely seen off their island, the Stoneborn once were accustomed to crossing the Bay of Seals to trade, or more often raid, until King Brandon Stark, ninth of his name, broke their power once and for all, destroying their ships and forbade them from the sea. For most of recorded history, they've remained an isolated, backward, savage people, and likely to murder those who land upon their isles. When they do consent to trade, however, the Skagosi offer pelts, obsidian blades and arrowheads, and unicorn horns for goods they desire. Some Skagosi have served in the Night's Watch as well. More than 1,000 years ago, a Kroll, a member of a clan that passes for nobility on Skagos, was even Lord Commander for a short time. Skagos has often been a source of trouble for the Starks, both as kings when they sought to conquer it, and as lords when they fought to keep it fealty. As recently as the reign of King Daeron II, the Isle rose up against the Lords of Winterfell, a rebellion that lasted years and claimed the lives of thousands of others, including that of Barthagon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, before finally being put down. Last, and some might say the least of the peoples of the north, are the swamp dwellers of the Neck, known as Crannogmen, for their floating islands on which they raise their halls and hovels. A small, sly people, some say they are small in stature because they intermarried with the children of the forest, but more likely it results from inadequate nourishment, as grains do not flourish amongst the fens and swamps and salt marshes of the Neck, and the Crannogmen subsist largely upon a diet of fish, frogs and lizards. They are quite a secretive people, preferring to keep to themselves. Long ago, the histories claim that the Crannogmen were ruled by the Marsh Kings. Singers tell of them riding on lizard lions and using great frog spears like lances. How much of this is actually true is hard to really say. Were these Marsh Kings even truly kings, as we understand as a modern concept? Archmaester Yaron writes that the Crannogmen saw their kings as the first among equals, who are often thought to be touched by the old gods, a fact that was said to show itself in eyes of strange hues, or even the ability of speaking with animals. Whatever the truth is, the last man to be called a Marsh King was killed by King Rickard Stark. He took the man's daughter as a wife, whereupon the Crannogmen bent their knees and accepted the domain of Winterfell. In the centuries since, Crannogmen have become stout allies of House Stark under the leadership of the Reeds of Greywater Watch. Like many of the other people of the north, they retain much of their own independence and custom and culture.